Hey everyone, Coach Heather here at Renovate Fitness, and welcome back to my Renovate Life Series. I'm basically days away from my July 9th hysterectomy, and if you saw my last video, you know I promised to bring a gangload of questions to my final pre-op appointment with my surgeon, Dr. Victoria Novoa. And well, we had our consult on July 1st, and I took a bunch of notes, and she broke everything down on my list. So, basically, so many women are facing this major surgery and they don't have a clear roadmap. And I wanted to basically share my experience, and that's what I've been doing throughout this whole process, and I'll continue to do so. And part of that is I wanted to share all the information I received from my doctor so you guys have a thorough educational guide. So let's dive in. All right, so first off, let's talk about the actual surgery and the day of prep. I'm going to have what's called a total laparoscopic hysterectomy, a bilateral salpingectomy, and a cystoscopy. And I know that's a lot, but basically it means removing my uterus and my cervix through small, minimally invasive incisions in my abdomen using a laparoscopic instrument, gas, a camera, and light. And it also means surgically removing both of my fallopian tubes and inserting a camera directly into my bladder at the end of the procedure to visually confirm that my bladder is intact and that my urinary tract sustained no damage. So, this procedure, she said, is going to be taking about 2.5 to 3 hours under general anesthesia. And once I'm asleep, they basically are going to place my body in what's called a Trendelenburg position. And it's basically like me having let's see, I'm going to be tilted head down with my hips up. So my internal organs naturally slide up and out of the way for her to do the procedure. So, yeah, kind of interesting. And then I also asked if there was a chance of my laparoscopic surgery turning into a large abdominal incision once she gets inside, because that is a possibility. And she says it's highly unlikely, but it's a backup safety plan. So that's good because I prefer not to have a huge incision. I prefer her not to cut through the abdominal wall and all the muscle tissue because then that's just going to make my recovery that much longer and more challenging. So obviously, I want this to be as smooth as possible. But she said that the only way she would do it is if she couldn't see the surgical area clearly, or if my body didn't handle the pressure of that head down tilt very well, then they'd have to put me in a lying down position, and then she'd have to do that long incision. So basically, for how large my uterus is and for how many fibroids I have, she says I have a popcorn uterus, and basically, they cannot count how many fibroids I have in my uterus because there's just so many. She just couldn't even count them. So basically, um, those the fibroids are going to come through those tiny laparoscopic holes, and it's going to be called a process. Well, the process is called morcellation. And basically, what it means is they're going to have to cut everything up into little pieces. So they have to detach my uterus and assert my cervix, and then they place them inside of a specialized medical bag while it's actually still inside my abdomen, which is kind of interesting. Then they're going to cut it up into smaller pieces. And if the fibroids are too big, they're going to cut those up as well. And they do that inside the actual bag itself, which is inside my body, so that it can be safely removed piece by piece. And also, the bag is there to prevent contamination to everything else inside my body. So they don't want the fibroid cells to spill into my belly, for example. And depending on how my anatomy looks, it will exit through my vaginal canal or a slightly widened belly button incision. And basically, she's going to determine that, I guess, while she's doing the procedure. So, for my day of logistics, there's absolutely no food after midnight and clear fluids only up to 4 hours before surgery. And then my surgery is going to be at 10:30 a.m., but I have to be there at 8:30 a.m. to have them get me ready and put me under and everything. And then right before they take me back into surgery, they're going to be giving me medication. that turns my urine a dark orange color. And that's basically going to help prevent bladder spasms later on. But it also lets the doctor clearly see my bladder tract on the camera to make 100% sure that nothing is accidentally nicked during surgery. So, yeah, very important. And then basically, um, yeah, that's kind of what's going to happen as far as prep and day of surgery. Okay, so now let's talk about anatomy and what's actually going on inside my body once the uterus and the cervix are officially gone. So, when my cervix comes out, the top of my vagina is going to be completely open to the abdominal cavity. And Dr. Novoa, she said she's going to close this up laparoscopically. And basically, laparoscopic is with the robotic surgery, the arms. And then it's going to be done in two separate layers using a heavy specialized stitch called a zero V lock. And that's creating what's known as a vaginal cuff. And that takes a full 6 weeks to completely heal, which is why the initial recovery period is 6 weeks long. Although I did find out yesterday through a doctor of physical therapy that actually me returning to my exercise and physical activity and everything could take 3 to 6 months, and for some people could take 12 months. So, I wasn't too excited about that. I was hoping to get back in a lot sooner, but you know what? I'm going to do this safe. I want to do it right. I don't want to have any complications. So, it's going to take longer than I expected for actually getting back into my full exercise routine. But basically, I asked Dr. Novoa what happens to the empty space inside me, and she told me that the surrounding bowels will just naturally shift down to safely fill the space up. And basically, to help keep everything structurally locked down and reduce any prolapse risk in the future, she's going to perform a structural suspension during the surgery and basically anchoring the top of my vagina directly to my uteral sacral ligaments. I know that sounds like a lot, and I don't completely understand it, but that's what she's going to do. And so, for you ladies out there worrying about nerve damage affecting intimacy or bladder function, you can take a deep breath because she assured me that physical dimensions will stay exactly the same, and a total hysterectomy does not alter my anatomical ability to experience pleasure or to achieve orgasm. So, woo woo. Anyway, to wrap up the structural side, my laparoscopic entry points are closed under the skin with dissolvable stitches. And then the surface is sealed with a waterproof surgical glue called Dermabond, and then that stays on there for about 2 weeks. Everything removed goes straight to pathology for testing, and those results will pop up into my client portal and will be available when I have my 2 week checkup. And then also, one thing I did ask her because number one, I'm curious, and number two, I'd love to share this with everyone, is I asked her if she could take pictures of everything that she takes out of my body. And she said she can. And she's also going to be taking pictures inside with the cameras. But she says when she takes pictures of what comes out, it's all going to be in pieces because of the morcellation process. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. So I won't be able to show a big picture of like the uterus and everything all in whole. Everything's going to be in pieces. All right, so now let's talk about recovery, pain management, and the rules that completely caught me off guard. So, to avoid relying on heavy narcotics, our baseline layer of defense is taking 600 milligrams of ibuprofen and 500 milligrams of Tylenol, either every 6 hours for the first 5 days. No, that is actually every 6 hours for the first 5 days. And then I'll also have a prescription for oxycodone strictly for severe, like breakthrough pain. And she can call in a muscle relaxer for my pelvic floor if it starts to spasm. So I just have to let her know that. But basically, because anesthesia and pain meds completely paralyze the digestive tract, she has me starting Miralax one day before surgery and continuing for 3 days post-op to aggressively block constipation because pelvic backup means recovery pain that will be so much worse. And I know I don't want that. And then as far as restrictions, I have a strict weight limit of nothing heavier than 15 pounds for 6 weeks. And here's the real kicker, though. I'm officially banned from doing laundry or loading and unloading the dishwasher for the first 2 weeks. So, honey, you're going to have to do all that. And then also, I know bending down and reaching down below is going to be a challenge, and getting in and out of bed and stuff like that. And even walking when it is time to walk, it's going to be very slow. So you just have to be really careful because reaching and twisting motion actually creates internal pressure, which can actually tear the vaginal cuff open. And that's a major medical emergency called cuff dis, dis, dehiscence. It's a confusing word. So my husband is basically on full chore duties. And one good thing to note is that stairs, however, are totally safe on day one as long as I take them nice and slow because we have a two-story house. So, and then, next, as a coach and an athlete myself, I know that I really needed to get clarity from her on my exercise and pelvic rest boundaries. So, for 6 weeks, there's no working out, means a complete hard stop on resistance training, core bracing, any band work, even lying down or seated to protect those internal stitches. So I am allowed to do some stretching. So, for example, like gentle neck and shoulder mobility, some ankle pumps to keep circulation moving, some general body stretches that don't involve the midsection and torso rotating and twisting. And then deep diaphragmatic breathing exercises are also completely safe. And then what's great is walking is highly encouraged and actually starts the very next day after surgery. And basically, I can progress with walking based on my own body, such as like fatigue, soreness, and all that good stuff. It's not like a fixed clock or distance. It's basically how I feel. Now, I usually tend to have a high tolerance for pain, I think. Although as I get older, I feel like it's going down a bit. So I have to really be careful and really pay attention to my body so I don't overdo it because I know myself. I like to push. And then, as far as intimacy is concerned, there's an absolute mandate of pelvic rest for 6 weeks, meaning absolutely nothing goes inside the vagina. No fingers, toys, tampons, nothing. Body parts, anything. So I won't be cleared until a full physical pelvic exam at my 6 week checkup, which then verifies that the vaginal cuff is completely healed and closed. And because standard surgical trauma causes temporary pelvic floor dysfunction like bladder spasms or bowel changes, she is writing me a proactive referral for pelvic floor physical therapy to start at the 2 month mark. And I specifically asked for that. It was optional. And I was like, you know what? I want to do that no matter what. So please give it to me. And then lastly, when we're talking like long-term hormone care and everything, even though my hormones are staying to prevent surgical menopause, that was a choice on my part because I wanted my body to pump out as many natural hormones as possible for as long as possible to kind of postpone actual menopause as long as possible. But basically, even though my ovaries are going to stay to prevent surgical menopause, the surgery naturally does alter their blood supply initially. So it's common to experience like temporary ovarian shock with like hot flashes, night sweats, or like a dip in libido and whatnot. So my doctor recommended that for long-term athletic hormone optimization, routine blood work, and wellness labs, that I transition my care from a surgeon to a specialized menopause doctor or bioidentical hormone replacement therapy doctor. So I'm currently on the search for the right one for me. I'm actually looking for a primary care physician that ideally specializes in perimenopause and menopause and long-term hormone replacement therapy, but it's kind of hard to find one that accepts insurance. So far, the ones I've encountered are cash pay. But the reason why I want to combine them into one ideal person is because then I have better chances of optimizing my health long term with the way I like to do it. And I'm very particular. I'm in the health and fitness industry. I'm working with women all the time and their own hormones and everything. So I fully understand this process, but we'll see. I may have to switch it up into do doctors. That time will tell once I finish doing my research. But yeah, other than that, I know that was a lot of information, but I wanted to provide a really detailed breakdown of my surgery, which is going to be on July 9th. So you guys wish me a successful surgery, a successful recovery process, and I'll see you guys on the other side of recovery. All right, bye.